Have you ever wondered what it feels like when fate decides to completely transform your life in a single moment? For Eliza Bennett, it happened on a rain-soaked country road with a flat tire and a mysterious stranger who changed everything. She never could have imagined that the handsome man who stopped to help her that stormy night would turn out to be someone who could alter the course of her entire future. Their eyes met for just a moment under the glow of headlights, but something passed between them that neither could explain, something that would bring them together again in the most unexpected way. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day, and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Rain pelted against the windshield of Eliza Bennett's aging Honda Civic as she squinted through the darkness, her knuckles white as she gripped the steering wheel. The rural road stretched before her, a black ribbon disappearing into the night, illuminated only by her dim headlights and occasional flashes of lightning. She was already running late for her sister's engagement dinner, having stayed too long at the bookstore where she worked, organizing the new shipment that had arrived that afternoon. It was just like her to put others' needs before her own, to ensure everything was perfect at work before leaving, even if it meant racing against time to make it to an important family event. The first sign of trouble came with a slight tug on the steering wheel, followed by an ominous thumping sound that grew louder with each rotation of her tires. Eliza's heart sank as she recognized the telltale signs of a flat tire. She'd never changed one before, despite her father's insistence years ago that she learn how. Instead, she'd smiled politely and assured him she'd always have her phone to call for help. Now, as she pulled her car to the shoulder of the road and watched the signal bars on her phone disappear one by one, she regretted not listening to him. "No, no, no," she whispered, tapping her phone desperately, as if that might summon the missing bars back to life. The screen remained stubbornly empty of service. The rural back road she'd taken as a shortcut had betrayed her with its lack of cell coverage. Eliza switched on her hazard lights and rested her forehead against the steering wheel, trying to calm her racing thoughts. Her sister, Caroline, would understand her absence, but the disappointment would be there nonetheless. Caroline had always been the golden child, confident, outgoing, and successful, while Eliza preferred the company of books and quiet spaces. The engagement dinner was important. It was a chance for Eliza to show her support, to be present for once in the way her family always wanted her to be. She took a deep breath and stepped out of the car, immediately regretting it as the rain soaked through her thin cardigan. The air was heavy with the scent of wet asphalt and the earthy aroma of the surrounding fields. Opening her trunk, she located the spare tire and jack, staring at them as if they were alien artifacts. A car manual sat in the glove compartment, but reading instructions by the dim light of her phone flashlight in pouring rain seemed impossible. Headlights appeared in the distance, cutting through the downpour. Eliza froze, conflicting emotions washing over her. Relief at the possibility of help battled with the anxiety of facing a stranger on a deserted road. As the vehicle slowed, she could make out the sleek silhouette of a luxury car, its black paint gleaming even in the dim light. The car pulled up behind hers, its headlights illuminating her pathetic Sienna-soaking wet woman staring helplessly at a flat tire. Eliza tugged at her dripping hair, trying to make herself presentable, though she knew it was a lost cause. The driver's door opened, and a tall figure emerged, sheltered momentarily by an umbrella, before closing it as he approached her. "Need some help?" The man's voice was deep and calm, barely audible above the patter of rain. As he stepped into the glow of her hazard lights, Eliza's breath caught in her throat. He was strikingly handsome, with dark hair plastered to his forehead by the rain and eyes that seemed to reflect the storm itself. His expensive suit was getting ruined by the second, yet he didn't seem to care. "I have a flat," she managed to say, gesturing unnecessarily at the obvious problem. "And no service to call anyone." He nodded, glancing at the tire, then back at her. "I can change it for you, if you'd like." Something about his quiet confidence made her trust him instantly. "That would be... thank you. I'm already late for my sister's engagement dinner." "Important night," he commented, removing his suit jacket and rolling up the sleeves of his white shirt, which was quickly becoming transparent in the rain. "I'm Sebastian, by the way." "Eliza," she replied, watching as he effortlessly located the right tools in her trunk and set to work loosening the lug nuts on the flat tire. His movements were precise and practiced, as if changing a tire in the pouring rain was something he did every day. "You know what you're doing," she observed, then immediately felt foolish for stating the obvious. A slight smile played at the corners of his lips. Cars are familiar territory. He worked methodically, jacking up the car with ease, removing the flat tire and replacing it with the spare. His hands were strong but gentle, moving with a certainty that Eliza found mesmerizing. "Do you mind holding this?" he asked, handing her a lug nut. Their fingers brushed, and despite the chill of the rain, warmth spread through her body. She held the small piece of metal as if it were precious, watching as he completed the task that would have taken her hours to figure out on her own. As he tightened the last lug nut, Sebastian glanced up at her, rain dripping from his eyelashes. "This is just a temporary spare. You'll need to get a proper replacement soon." Eliza nodded, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. "How can I thank you? I'd have been stranded here all night if you hadn't stopped." Sebastian stringed up, wiping his hands on his ruined pants. "No need for thanks. Anyone would have done the same. Not everyone would stop on a night like this," she insisted. "At least let me give you my number. For coffee or something?" The words left her mouth before she could stop them, and she immediately felt her cheeks flush hot despite the cold rain. He seemed surprised by her offer, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "That's very kind, but I'm just glad I could help." He glanced at his watch, a subtle but elegant timepiece that probably cost more than her car. "You should get going. You don't want to miss your sister's dinner." Before she could protest, he collected his tools and returned them to her trunk. "Drive safely, Eliza, and remember to get that tire replaced properly." He walked back to his car, not bothering to open his umbrella against the rain that had already soaked him through. Eliza stood there, watching as he slid into the driver's seat of what she now recognized as a Maserati, a car so far removed from her world that it might as well have been a spaceship. "Wait!" she called out, but the purr of his engine drowned her voice, and within moments his taillights disappeared into the darkness, leaving her alone with her fixed tire and an inexplicable sense of loss. The engagement dinner was in full swing by the time Eliza arrived, her hair hastily dried with the car's heater, and her clothes still damp against her skin. Caroline, radiant in a designer dress, barely noticed her late arrival, too caught up in the celebration and the admiring gazes of her fiancé, James. Eliza slipped into a seat at the far end of the table, grateful for the anonymity. "You missed the toast," her mother whispered, disapproval evident in her tone. "And why are you wet? Didn't you bring an umbrella?" "Flat tire," Eliza explained, reaching for a glass of water. "Someone stopped to help me change it." Her mother's eyebrows rose. "A stranger? Eliza, do you have any idea how dangerous that was? You should have called roadside assistance." "No service," Eliza said simply, not bothering to explain further. Her mother would never understand the strange encounter, the connection she'd felt with the mysterious Sebastian. Instead, she turned her attention to the celebration, raising her glass belatedly to her sister's happiness, while her thoughts remained on a rain-soaked road and a pair of storm-gray eyes. The next few days passed in a blur of routine. Eliza went to work at the bookstore, arranged displays, helped customers find their perfect reads, and tried not to think about Sebastian. But he lingered in her thoughts, a mystery she couldn't solve. Who stops to help a stranger in pouring rain, wearing what was clearly an expensive suit, driving a luxury car, and then disappears without taking credit or contact information? It was the stuff of fairy tales, not real. Life certainly not her life. On Friday evening, she closed the bookstore alone, her coworker having left early for a date. The small shop was her sanctuary, filled with stories of people braver and more interesting than she considered herself to be. She loved the smell of books, the weight of them in her hands, the promise of adventures contained within their pages. As she locked the front door, she glanced at the romance section and smiled ruefully. Her brief encounter with Sebastian would fit right in among those tales of serendipitous meetings and undeniable connections. At home, her small apartment welcomed her with familiar comfort. It wasn't Mocha one-bedroom with creaky floors and outdated appliances, but it was hers, filled with books and plants and the soft, worn furniture she collected over the years. She kicked off her shoes and collapsed onto the couch, turning on the television for background noise as she sorted through her mail. The news was on. Something about a major announcement in the automotive industry. Eliza was about to change the channel when a familiar face appeared on the screen. She froze, the remote control slipping from her fingers. There, he was, Sebastian, standing at a podium, cameras flashing all around him as he spoke confidently to a room full of reporters. But it wasn't just Sebastian. It was Sebastian Harrington, heir to the Harrington Motors empire, one of the largest luxury car manufacturers in the world. The chyron beneath his image read, "Sebastian Harrington named new CEO of Harrington Motors following father's retirement." "No way," Eliza whispered, leaning forward as if getting closer to the screen might reveal this to be a mistake, a man who merely looked like her roadside savior. But there was no mistaking those eyes, that voice, the way his mouth curved slightly at one corner when he was about to speak. "Mr. Harrington, how do you plan to address the increasing demand for sustainable luxury vehicles?" a reporter asked. "Sebastian, no." Mr. Harrington adjusted his tie, a gesture that somehow reminded Eliza of the way he'd rolled up his sleeves in the rain. "Harrington Motors has always been at the forefront of innovation," he answered. "My father laid an incredible foundation, and I intend to build upon it by introducing our new line of electric luxury vehicles next quarter." Eliza couldn't believe it. The man who had knelt in the mud to change her tire was a billionaire, the kind of person whose life existed in newspaper headlines and business magazines, completely separate from her world of paperback novels and discount coffee. The press conference continued, but Eliza hardly registered the words. Her mind was replaying their encounter, recasting it in light of this new information. Had he recognized her small, ordinary car as being in trouble and stopped out of some noblesse oblige? Was changing her tire a moment of slumming it, a story he'd later tell at cocktail parties to illustrate his charitable nature? The thought made her cheeks burn with embarrassment. She'd offered to buy him coffee, as if that could ever be adequate compensation for someone like him. No wonder he'd declined. As the news segment ended, the anchor added a final note. The notoriously private Harrington has been thrust into the spotlight following his father's unexpected retirement announcement last week. Sources close to the family suggest the transition has been in the works for months, with the younger Harrington gradually taking on more responsibilities at the company known for its handcrafted luxury vehicles. Eliza turned off the television, her mind racing. It had been a chance encounter, nothing more. He'd probably forgotten all about her the moment he drove away. Men like Sebastian Harrington didn't remember women like her. They moved through life on a different plane of existence, their paths crossing only by the strangest of coincidences. Yet as she prepared for bed that night, she couldn't shake the memory of his eyes meeting hers in the rain, of the gentle way he'd handled her car, of the brief moment when their fingers had touched. It felt significant, though she knew that was just her imagination, fueled by too many romance novels and not enough real-life interactions. Monday morning arrived with clear skies and unseasonably warm weather. Eliza walked to work, enjoying the sunshine that seemed determined to erase all memory of last week's storm. The bookstore was quiet, as Monday mornings usually were, giving her time to process new inventory and rearrange displays. When the bell above the door chimed just before noon, she looked up from her inventory list to see a well-dressed woman with sharp eyes and an even sharper haircut surveying the store. "Can I help you find something?" Eliza asked, setting down her clipboard. The woman approached the counter, her heels clicking authoritatively on the hardwood floor. "I'm looking for Eliza Bennett." A flutter of anxiety stirred in Eliza's stomach. "That's me." The woman extended a perfectly manicured hand. "Charlotte Wu, executive assistant to Sebastian Harrington. Mr. Harrington would like to invite you to dinner this evening to discuss a business opportunity." Eliza stared at her, certain this was some elaborate prank. "I'm sorry, what?" Charlotte withdrew a business card from her sleek leather portfolio and placed it on the counter. "Mr. Harrington assisted you with a flat tire last Thursday evening. He was quite impressed by your Resilience, I believe he called it. He remembered me? The words came out as barely more than a whisper. Mr. Harrington rarely forgets anything, especially people who interest him. Charlotte replied, her professional demeanor softening slightly. The car will pick you up at 7. The address on file is correct, yes? 1742 Maple Street, apartment 3B? Eliza's surprise turned to alarm. How do you know where I live? Charlotte's smile was apologetic, but not particularly concerned. It's my job to know these things, Ms. Bennett. Nothing sinister, I assure you. We simply have resources at our disposal. And if I say no? Eliza couldn't believe she was even considering refusing. But something about being researched without her knowledge made her uncomfortable. Then I will convey your regrets to Mr. Harrington, and that will be the end of it. Charlotte's tone suggested she didn't often hear people say no to her boss. However, I've been instructed to tell you that this dinner is not merely social. Mr. Harrington has a proposition that might be of interest to someone with your particular skills. My skills? Eliza almost laughed. What skills? I sell books. Among other things, Charlotte replied enigmatically. 7 o'clock, Ms. Bennett. Business casual is fine. With that, she turned and left the store, the bell chiming cheerfully in her wake. Eliza picked up the business card, running her finger over the embossed logo of Harrington Motors, a stylized H that somehow managed to evoke both speed and elegance. This couldn't be real. Sebastian Harrington, billionaire CEO of a global car company, wanted to have dinner with her? To discuss a business opportunity? It made no sense. Unless he was one of those rich men who enjoyed toying with ordinary people, who got some perverse pleasure from disrupting lives simply because they could. The thought made her stomach churn, but curiosity won out over caution. If nothing else, she would have a story to tell the night she dined with a billionaire. And if he turned out to be as genuine as he'd seemed on that rainy night, well, that would be its own kind of miracle. At 6:55 that evening, Eliza stood by her apartment window, watching the street below. She'd changed outfits 4 times before settling on a simple navy blue dress that she typically saved for job interviews. Her hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, her makeup minimal but carefully applied. She didn't want to look like she was trying too hard, even though her racing heart betrayed how important this felt. A black car pulled up precisely at 7, its polished surface reflecting the streetlights. It wasn't the Maserati from the other night, but something equally impressive, a Bentley, she thought, though she couldn't be sure. The driver, a man in a crisp uniform, emerged and looked up at her building. Taking a deep breath, Eliza grabbed her purse and headed downstairs. The driver opened the rear door as she approached. Ms. Bennett, he greeted her with a polite nod. Mr. Harrington is waiting at the restaurant. The interior of the car was all soft leather and subtle lighting. Eliza sat stiffly, afraid to touch anything, feeling woefully out of place. As they drove through the city, she watched familiar streets transform into the upscale district she rarely had reason to visit. They eventually pulled up to a discreet restaurant with no sign, just a simple brass number on the door. The Monarch Room, the driver informed her, opening her door. Mr. Harrington is inside. Devon will show you to his table. Indeed, a host materialized as soon as she entered, greeting her by name as if she were a regular. The restaurant was intimate and elegant, with soft jazz playing and conversations conducted in hushed tones. Eliza followed Devon through the dimly lit space, past tables occupied by people who radiated wealth and influence, until they reached a secluded corner booth. Sebastian Harrington stood as she approached, and Eliza's carefully rehearsed greeting died on her lips. He was even more handsome than she remembered, his dark hair perfectly styled, his suit clearly tailored to his athletic frame. But what struck her most was the genuine smile that lit up his face when he saw her. "Eliza," he said, extending his hand. "Thank you for coming." His touch was warm and firm, a stark contrast to the cold rain of their first meeting. "Mr. Harrington," she replied, proud that her voice remained steady. "Sebastian, please," he insisted, gesturing for her to sit. I think changing a tire together in a storm puts us on a first-name basis, don't you? She smiled despite herself. I didn't do much changing. You held a lug nut, he reminded her with a teasing glint in his eye. Very important job. A waiter appeared with water and wine, the latter already poured in Sebastian's glass. Would you care for some? Sebastian asked, indicating the bottle. It's Excellente Bordeaux, from a small vineyard in France. Water is fine for now, thank you, Eliza said, not wanting alcohol to cloud her judgment. Sebastian nodded, respecting her decision without comment. I imagine you're wondering why I asked you here. The thought did cross my mind, she admitted. Your assistant mentioned a business opportunity, but I can't imagine what that might be. He leaned forward slightly. I've been working on a project for the past year, a new direction for Harrington Motors. We're launching a line of electric vehicles aimed at making luxury sustainable, but I want to take it further. I want to tell stories. Eliza raised an eyebrow, uncertain where this was going. Stories? About the relationship between people and their cars, he explained, his enthusiasm evident. Not just advertising, but real narratives about how cars become part of our lives, witnesses to our most important moments. When I saw you that night, stranded with your flat tire, something clicked. There was a story, the raw determination, your vulnerability, the way you trusted a stranger to help. It got me thinking. The waiter returned to take their orders. Sebastian recommended the sea bass, which Eliza agreed to, still trying to process his words. So, she said once they were alone again, you want to use my story in Ross. Advertisement? The damsel in distress saved by Harrington Motors? Sebastian winced. That's not quite, because I'm not interested in being a poster girl for female helplessness, she continued, surprised by her own boldness. Yes, I didn't know how to change a tire, but I would have figured it out eventually. I have no doubt, he agreed, his expression serious now. And that's not what I'm proposing at all. I don't want to use your story, I want you to help collect others. You're a bookseller, yes, but I did some research. You have a degree in literature, with a focus on personal narratives. You've published articles on the power of storytelling and building community connections. You understand what makes a story resonate. Eliza stared at him, stunned that he knew these details of her life. Her thesis had been published in a small academic journal read by perhaps 50 people. Her occasional freelance articles appeared in local publications with limited circulation, yet Sebastian Harrington had found them. That's a bit unsettling, she admitted. How much research did you do on me? He had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. More than was probably appropriate, I'll admit. But I was intrigued. Not many people would offer to buy coffee for a stranger who helped them on a rainy night. I didn't know you were you, she said lamely. That's precisely why I'm interested in your perspective, Sebastian replied. You saw me as just a person, not as a Harrington. Do you know how rare that is in my world? Their food arrived, giving Eliza a moment to collect her thoughts. The sea bass was perfectly prepared, but she barely tasted it, her mind racing with implications. What exactly would this job entail? She finally asked. Sebastian's face brightened. A 6-month project, to start. You'd interview people about their relationships with their cars, not just Harrington owners, but all kinds of people with all kinds of vehicles. We'd collect these stories, publish them as a book, create a digital archive, maybe even a podcast. It would run parallel to our new vehicle launch, but exist as its own entity, authentic stories, non-advertisements. And why me? Surely you have an entire marketing department. That's exactly why I don't want them doing this, he said. They can't help but think in terms of selling cars. I want someone who thinks in terms of human connection, someone who can see the story beneath the surface. Someone like you. Eliza took a sip of her water, buying time. This is all very unexpected. I know, Sebastian acknowledged. And I understand if you need time to consider. The position would require some travel. But you'd have considerable creative freedom. The compensation is generous. Charlotte has the details prepared in a formal offer letter. Of course she does, Eliza murmured, half amused by the efficiency. Can I ask you something personal? Sebastian nodded, setting down his fork. Of course. Why did you stop that night? You must have been on your way somewhere important. Your suit was ruined. It was pouring rain. Most people would have driven by. He was quiet for a moment, considering her question with unexpected seriousness. My father taught me to drive when I was 16, he finally said. Not just how to operate a vehicle, but how to respect it, how to understand its mechanisms and its purpose. He said, cars connect people to places, to moments, to each other. Never forget that we're not just manufacturing machines, we're facilitating journeys. Sebastian's expression softened with the memory. When I saw you there, I saw someone whose journey had been interrupted. I couldn't just drive by. There was sincerity in his voice that resonated with Eliza. Whatever his reasons for tracking her down afterward, that initial moment of kindness seemed genuine. I'll consider your offer, she said. But I'd like to see it in writing, and I'd like some time to think about it. Of course, Sebastian agreed immediately. No pressure. Charlotte will send over the details tomorrow. And regardless of your decision, I hope you'll allow me to replace your tire properly. The spare you're driving on isn't meant for extended use. Eliza laughed softly. Is this how you normally recruit employees? Fix their cars first? Only the special ones, he replied with a smile that made her heart beat a little faster. The remainder of dinner passed in surprisingly easy conversation. Sebastian asked about her work at the bookstore, listened attentively to her recommendations for books he should read, and shared stories about growing up in the shadow of his father's business. By the time dessert arrived, a chocolate souffle that melted on her tongue, Eliza found Bia herself relaxing, almost forgetting the vast differences in their social positions. As they left the restaurant, Sebastian walked her to his waiting car. My driver will take you home, he said. And, Eliza, thank you for coming tonight. Whatever you decide about the job, I'm glad our paths crossed again. There was something in his expression, a vulnerability behind the confidence that made her wonder if Sebastian Harrington was as isolated by his wealth and position as she sometimes felt by her shyness. The thought was oddly comforting. So am I, she replied honestly. Good night, Sebastian. The following morning, true to Sebastian's word, a courier delivered a thick envelope to the bookstore. Inside was a formal offer letter outlining the position of narrative collection specialist for Harrington Motors' new heritage project. The salary made Eliza gasp. It was nearly 3 times what she earned at the bookstore. There were benefits, travel allowances, even a housing stipend should she need to temporarily relocate for the project. Attached was a personal note from Sebastian. The journey matters as much as the destination. I hope you'll consider being part of ours. Shh. Eliza spent her lunch break reading through the contract details, her practical mind warring with the part of her that still couldn't believe this was happening. It was an incredible opportunity, not just professionally, but personally. A chance to step out of her comfort zone, to challenge her tendencies toward invisibility, to use her skills in a meaningful way. But it also meant entering Sebastian's world, a realm so different from her own that she couldn't even imagine its contours. What if she failed? What if she didn't fit in? What if this was all an elaborate mistake, and he would soon realize she wasn't the person he thought she was? Her co-worker, Priya, noticed her distraction as they worked side by side shelving new arrivals. Earth to Eliza, she teased, waving a hand in front of Eliza's face. You've been arranging those same 3 books for 10 minutes. What's going on? Eliza hesitated, then decided to confide in her friend. She explained about the flat tire, the mysterious stranger who turned out to be Sebastian Harrington, the dinner, and now the job offer. Priya's eyes widened with each new detail. This is literally the plot of every romance novel we sell, she exclaimed when Eliza finished. Except instead of being a duke, he's a car tycoon. Girl, you have to take this job. It's not that simple, Eliza protested. What if I'm terrible at it? What if it's all a mistake? What if it's not? Priya countered. What if this is the universe giving you a nudge toward something amazing? You're always helping customers find stories that change their lives. Maybe it's time for your story to take a turn. Eliza couldn't argue with that logic. She'd spent years reading about characters who took risks, who stepped into the unknown, who discovered strength they didn't know they possessed. Perhaps it was time to write her own chapter of transformation. That evening, she called the number provided in the offer letter. Charlotte answered on the first ring, as if she'd been waiting for Eliza's call. "Ms. Bennett," she said, her professional tone unchanged. "Have you reached a decision?" "Yes," Eliza replied, her voice steadier than she expected. "I'd like to accept the position." "Excellent. I'll inform Mr. Harrington. He'll be pleased." There was a pause. Then Charlotte added, with what sounded almost like warmth, "Welcome to Harrington Motors, Ms. Bennett. I think you're going to surprise yourself." The next 2 weeks passed in a whirlwind of preparations. Eliza gave notice at the bookstore, arranged for her apartment to be sublet during her extended absences for travel, and met with Charlotte to sign paperwork and receive her new company credentials. Through it all, Sebastian remained at a distance, his presence felt only through occasional emails outlining his vision for the project and brief phone calls to address specific questions. It was a relief. In a way, Eliza needed time to adjust to this new reality without the distraction of his intense focus. On her first official day, she arrived at Harrington Motors' gleaming headquarters in downtown, a testament to the company's success and aesthetic. The building rose in sleek curves of glass and steel, somehow managing to evoke the elegance of the cars it produced. Inside, she was greeted by an atrium filled with vintage Harrington models alongside prototypes of future designs, a physical timeline of the company's evolution. Charlotte met her in the lobby, tablet in hand. "Right on time," she approved, leading Eliza to a security desk where she was issued a company ID badge. "We'll start with a tour, then you'll meet with the Heritage Project team. Mr. Harrington will join for the afternoon session." As they walked through the building, Eliza absorbed the culture of Harrington Motors, the quiet efficiency, the attention to detail, the sense of history balanced with innovation. Employees nodded respectfully to Charlotte as they passed, curiosity in their glances at Eliza. "Everyone knows you're Sebastian's personal hire," Charlotte explained as they entered an elevator requiring special access. "It's unusual. He typically stays far removed from recruitment." "That doesn't make things awkward at all," Eliza murmured. Charlotte's lips quirked in what might have been a smile. "You'll find your way. Sebastian doesn't make mistakes when it comes to people." The Heritage Project team occupied a unique space on the 30th floor. Not the executive level where Sebastian had his office, but a specially designed area with collaborative workspaces, interview rooms, and a small recording studio. The team consisted of a documentary filmmaker, a sound engineer, a digital archivist, and now Eliza. "We've been waiting for you," said Marcus, the filmmaker, a lanky man with kind eyes and an easy manner. "Sebastian's been very mysterious about the narrative direction. Said we had to wait for the expert." Eliza felt a flash of panic at being labeled an expert, but before she could demur, the elevator doors opened, and Sebastian himself walked in. He was dressed more casually than she'd seen him before. Dark jeans, a light blue button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, and what appeared to be very expensive but understated sneakers. "Good morning, everyone," he greeted them, his gaze lingering on Eliza. "I see you've all met our newest team member." The morning passed in detailed discussions of the project's scope, timeline, and expected outcomes. Sebastian was clearly passionate about preserving automotive stories, but open to ideas from everyone at the table. By lunch, Eliza had begun to find her voice, suggesting interview techniques that might draw out deeper emotional connections and ways to categorize the narratives they collected. "Excellent thinking," Sebastian approved, making notes in a leather-bound journal. "Now, if you don't mind, I'd like to steal Eliza for lunch. We have some additional matters to discuss." This announcement was met with knowing glances among the team that made Eliza uncomfortable, but she followed Sebastian to the elevator, which whisked them not down to the company cafeteria, as she expected, but up to the roof. The elevator opened onto a stunning rooftop garden, complete with a small greenhouse and seating areas strategically placed to offer panoramic views of the city. A table had been set for two beneath a pergola draped with climbing roses. "I hope you don't mind," Sebastian said, gesturing toward the table. "I thought you might appreciate some quiet for our conversation." "It's beautiful," Eliza admitted, taking in the unexpected oasis. "Do you often have lunch up here?" "Almost never," he replied, holding out a chair for her. "It was my mother's project. She wanted a place where nature could thrive above the concrete. After she died, my father maintained it meticulously, but he rarely visited. Too many memories, I think." Eliza sensed the weight behind those words. "And you?" Sebastian considered the question as he poured water for them both. "I come here when I need perspective. The view reminds me that there's a world beyond Harrington Motors." A server, Eliza, hadn't even noticed the small outdoor kitchen area, brought plates of grilled vegetables, quinoa, and perfectly seared salmon. The food was simple but exquisite, the kind of meal that emphasized quality ingredients over elaborate preparation. "I wanted to check in with you," Sebastian said as they ate. "This morning's session was intense, and I know everyone had a lot of opinions about the direction of the project." "They seem passionate," Eliza replied diplomatically. Sebastian smiled. "They are. But I want to make sure your voice isn't getting lost. This project needs your perspective, your understanding of how stories connect people. That's why I hired you." "I'm still not entirely sure why you did," she admitted. "There must be countless people more qualified. More experienced, perhaps," he conceded. "But qualification isn't just about experience or credentials. It's about insight, instinct." He paused, studying her face. "When I helped you that night, you said something that stuck with me. You said you were late for your sister's engagement dinner. Most people would have been focused on their own predicament, the inconvenience of the flat tire, but you were worried about letting someone else down. That kind of empathy is exactly what this project needs." Eliza remembered the moment, how vulnerable she'd felt standing in the rain, how desperate she'd been to make it to Caroline's celebration. "I didn't realize you were paying such close attention." "I noticed details," Sebastian said with a slight shrug. "It's part of what makes me good at my job. Cars are ultimately about details: the curve of a fender, the stitching on leather seats, the precise calibration of an engine. But they're meaningless without the human element, the stories behind why people choose them, where they go, what moments they witness." There was something in his intensity that both intimidated and attracted Eliza. He spoke about cars the way she spoke about books, not as objects, but as vessels for human experience. "So," she said, gathering her courage, "what's the real story behind you stopping that night?" "The truth is, someone like you doesn't usually stop to help someone like me." Sebastian's expression shifted, a flash of something like hurt crossing his features before he composed himself. "What do you mean, someone like you and someone like me?" Eliza gestured vaguely. "You know what I mean. You're this." She indicated the rooftop garden, the headquarters below, the empire he commanded. "And I'm just a bookstore clerk with a useless literature degree and a hand-me-down Honda." Sebastian set down his fork, his full attention on her now. "Is that really how you see yourself? As just anything?" The question caught her off guard. "I'm being realistic." "No," he countered. "You're being reductive, both about yourself and about me." He leaned forward, his voice lower, more personal. "Do you want to know why I stopped? The real reason? Because 20 years ago, my father and I were driving home from a car show. It was raining, just like that night with you. We got a flat tire on a country road, and we were stuck there for hours because he'd taken the spare out to make room for our luggage. Not a single car stopped to help. Not one. When I finally saw headlights, I was so excited, but they just drove right past us. I remember asking my father why they didn't stop, and he said, 'People see the car, Sebastian, not the people inside it.' He meant they saw our wealth and assumed we didn't need help. It was one of the most important lessons I ever learned about privilege and perception." Eliza was quiet, absorbing his words, seeing him in a new light. "So when I saw you that night," he continued, "I didn't see a bookstore clerk with a useless degree. I saw someone who needed help, the way my father and I had needed it once. The way everyone needs it sometimes, regardless of what car they drive or what job they have. That's the truth." The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable, and Eliza felt a wave of shame for her assumptions. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I shouldn't have. Don't apologize." Sebastian interrupted gently. Just understand that this project isn't about charity or some billionaire's whim. It's about recognizing that every person has a story worth hearing, including you, especially you. His words hung in the air between them, charged with meaning. Eliza found herself unable to look away from his gaze, which held hers with an intensity that made her heart race. The moment stretched, pregnant with possibility, until the server returned to clear their plates, breaking the spell. Sebastian cleared his throat. We should get back. The team will be waiting. The afternoon session was productive, with Eliza finding her voice more easily after her conversation with Sebastian. Together, they outlined a plan to begin collecting stories starting with employees of Harrington Motors, then expanding to owners of various car brands, and finally to a broader cross-section of people whose lives had been shaped by automobiles in significant ways. As the days turned into weeks, Eliza found herself settling into a rhythm at Harrington Motors. The initial awkwardness of being Sebastian's Heir faded as she proved her value to the team. Her interviews yielded rich, emotional narratives that even Marcus, with his filmmaker's eye for drama, had to admit were compelling. Sebastian remained involved, but not hovering, stopping by team meetings to check progress and occasionally sitting in on interviews. Eliza came to understand that his apparent distance wasn't lack of interest, but respect for her autonomy. He trusted her to do the job he'd hired her for, a realization that bolstered her confidence. 1 month into the project, Charlotte appeared at Eliza's desk with her tablet in hand. "Mr. Harrington would like you to join him for a site visit tomorrow," she announced. "Pack for an overnight stay. The company jet leaves at 8 a.m. Eliza blinked, caught off guard. "The company jet? Where are we going?" "Detroit," Charlotte replied. "Mr. Harrington is inspecting the new electric vehicle production facility and thought you might find it valuable to interview some of the engineers and craftspeople involved." The prospect of spending a day with Sebastian, away from the structured environment of headquarters, sent a flutter of nervous anticipation through Eliza's stomach. Their interactions had been primarily professional since their rooftop lunch, though she occasionally caught him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. "I'll be ready," she promised, mentally cataloging her limited wardrobe for something appropriate for a private jet and a factory tour. The following morning, a car collected her from her apartment at precisely 7 a.m. At the private airfield, Sebastian was waiting beside a sleek jet, emblazoned with the Harrington Motors logo. "Good morning," he greeted her, helping her with her small overnight bag. "I hope this isn't too disruptive to your schedule." "Not at all," she assured him, trying not to gawk at the luxury aircraft. "Charlotte said we're visiting the new production facility?" Sebastian nodded, guiding her up the steps into the jet. "The future of Harrington Motors. I thought you might be interested in seeing how the cars are made, not just the stories around them." The interior of the jet was understated but luxurious, with comfortable seating and a small conference area. As they settled in for takeoff, Eliza noticed Sebastian seemed different outside the office, more relaxed, less the CEO, and more the man who had changed her tire in the rain. Once they were airborne, he brought her coffee prepared exactly how she liked it, a detail he must have observed or requested from Charlotte. "I've been reading your interview transcripts," he said, settling into the seat across from her. "They're remarkable, Eliza. You have a gift for getting people to open up." She felt a flush of pleasure at his praise. "People want to tell their stories. They just need someone to listen." "And you do," he observed. "Truly listen, I mean. It's rarer than you might think." The flight passed quickly in comfortable conversation about the project, books they both read, and the future of automotive technology. Sebastian spoke passionately about sustainability, about reimagining luxury as responsibility rather than excess. His vision for Harrington Motors was progressive and thoughtful, not what Eliza had expected from the heir to an empire built on high-performance vehicles. In Detroit, a driver met them at the airport and took them directly to the new facility, a converted manufacturing plant that had been redesigned with cutting-edge green technology. As Sebastian guided her through the spaces where Harrington's electric vehicles would soon be assembled, Eliza was struck by his knowledge of every aspect of the process. From the sustainable materials being used in the interiors to the advanced battery technology being developed in-house. "You really know your stuff," she commented as they observed the team of engineers testing a prototype motor. I half expected the CEO to be more hands-off with the technical details. Sebastian smiled ruefully. My father insisted I learn every job in the company before I could lead it. I've worked on assembly lines, in design studios, even in the call center handling customer complaints. He believed you can't direct what you could. Don't understand. Wise man, Eliza murmured. He had his moments, Sebastian agreed, a shadow passing over his features. Come on, there are some people I want you to meet. Throughout the day, Sebastian introduced her to workers at all levels of the operation, veteran craftspeople who had been with Harrington for decades. Young engineers bringing fresh perspectives to the electric transition, designers balancing tradition with innovation. Eliza conducted informal interviews, gathering stories that would add depth to the heritage project. By evening, her notebook was filled with observations and quotes, her mind buzzing with new insights into the world Sebastian had been born into and was now reshaping. They had dinner at a small, family-owned restaurant not far from the facility Sebastian's choice, not what she had expected from someone of his stature. The owner's grandfather worked for Harrington in the 1950s, he explained as they enjoyed homemade pasta. 3 generations of his family have driven our cars. These are the connections that matter, the legacy that goes beyond metal and engineering. Eliza watched him interact with the restaurant staff, noting how he remembered names, asked after family members, treated everyone with the same respect he showed his executives. It was becoming increasingly difficult to reconcile this Sebastian with the billionaire CEO she had initially imagined him to be. Later, at the boutique hotel where Sebastian had arranged adjoining suites, Eliza found herself on the balcony of her room, gazing at the Detroit skyline. The day had been exhausting, but exhilarating, full of stories and connections that would enrich the project immeasurably. A soft knock at the door connecting their suites startled her from her reverie. Opening it, she found Sebastian holding 2 glasses of what appeared to be whiskey. I thought you might like a nightcap, he offered. It's a local distillery and other family business, with Harrington connections. She accepted the glass, noting the amber liquid catching the light. Thank you for today, she said. It was illuminating. Sebastian leaned against the door frame, not entering her suite, but not quite remaining in his own. The liminal space seemed symbolic of their relationship, professional but edged with something more, a current neither of them had openly acknowledged. What surprised you most? He asked, taking a sip of his whiskey. Eliza considered the question. How personal it all is to you, she finally said. This isn't just a company you inherited. It's something you care deeply about. The people, the legacy, the future. It shows in how you interact with everyone, from the engineers to the chef tonight. Sebastian looked pleased by her observation. My grandfather started Harrington Motors during the Depression. He had a vision of cars as more than transportation, as art, as achievement, as aspiration. My father expanded that vision globally, made the Harrington name synonymous with excellence. Now it's my turn to ensure we remain relevant, responsible, and true to those values while adapting to a changing world. He paused, studying her face in the soft light. What about you, Eliza? What drives you? The question caught her off guard. I don't know if I've figured that out yet, she admitted. Books have always been my refuge, stories my companions. I guess I'm driven by understanding, trying to make sense of the world through narratives, finding the threads that connect different experiences. That's why you're perfect for this project, Sebastian said softly. You see the storylines that others miss. There was something in his gaze that made Eliza's breath catch an intensity, an admiration that went beyond professional appreciation. The air between them seemed to thicken with unspoken words. Sebastian straightened suddenly, stepping back into his own suite. It's late. We should both get some rest. The jet leaves at 10 tomorrow. Right, Eliza agreed, feeling both relieved and disappointed by his retreat. Good night, Sebastian. Good night, Eliza, he replied, his eyes lingering on hers for a moment longer before he closed the door. Alone? Eliza finished her whiskey, the warmth spreading through her chest echoing the warmth she felt whenever Sebastian looked at her that way, as if she were a puzzle he was still solving, a story he was still reading, eager to discover the next chapter. The Detroit trip marked a turning point in their relationship. Back at headquarters, there was a new ease between them, a shared understanding bored of their time away from the structured corporate environment. Sebastian began inviting Eliza to more off-site meetings, seeking her perspective on aspects of the company beyond the Heritage Project. She found herself drawn into his world, introduced to industry leaders, brought along to charity events where the Harrington name carried significant weight. At one such event, a gala supporting automotive education for underprivileged youth, Eliza found herself standing beside Sebastian as he conversed with competitors and collaborators alike. He kept her close, his hand occasionally resting lightly on the small of her back as he introduced her to people who could further the Heritage Project's reach. "You two make quite the pair," observed an elegant older woman, who Eliza later learned was the widow of one of Sebastian's father's closest friends. "Sebastian has never brought anyone to these functions before. You must be very special, my dear." Before Eliza could clarify that their relationship was professional, Sebastian smoothly interjected, "Eliza is transforming how we think about our connection to customers, Mrs. Whitmore. Her work is going to change the industry's approach to storytelling." His deflection was skillful, but it left Eliza wondering about the assumptions being made by those in Sebastian's circle. As they left the gala that evening, she gathered her courage to address it directly. "People seem to think we're involved," she said, as they rode in the back of his car. "Romantically, I mean." Sebastian was quiet for a moment, his expression unreadable in the passing streetlights. "Does that bother you?" It wasn't the response she'd expected. I don't know. It's complicated, isn't it? You're my boss. Technically, Charlotte is your direct supervisor," he pointed out with a slight smile. "Sebastian," she said, slightly exasperated. "You know what I mean. There's a power imbalance, and perception matters in your position." He turned to face her more fully. "You're right, of course. But I'd be lying if I said I hadn't thought about it, about us. From that first night in the rain, there was something, I can't explain it, a connection. I've never experienced anything like it. And..." Eliza's heart hammered in her chest. This was dangerous territory, far removed from the safe, professional boundaries they'd maintained. "I've thought about it too," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But the Heritage Project is important. I don't want to jeopardize it, or my position, or your reputation." Sebastian reached across the seat, taking her hand in his. The touch was electric, sending shivers up her arm. "What if we took things slowly? See where this goes without making any declarations or changes to our professional arrangement? The project has another 5 months. Maybe by then, we'll know if this is just proximity and curiosity, or something more." His proposal was reasonable, measured, like everything about him. Eliza found herself nodding. "Slowly," she agreed, her fingers tightening around his. The following weeks brought subtle shifts to their dynamic. Sebastian began finding reasons to extend their professional interactions, lunch meetings that stretched into dinner, work sessions that continued long after the rest of the team had gone home. They discovered shared interests beyond books and cars, a love of obscure documentaries, a preference for hole-in-the-wall restaurants over trendy establishments, a mutual fascination with forgotten history. Eliza found herself opening up to him about her family, her golden child sister, Caroline, now happily married her well-meaning but perpetually disappointed parents. Her childhood spent mostly in the company of books rather than friends. In turn, Sebastian shared the weight of expectations that had shaped his life, the complex relationship with his recently retired father, the loneliness of a position that set him apart from others. The Heritage Project flourished under their collaborative leadership. Interviews were conducted across the country, stories collected from all walks of life, from a 98-year-old woman who had worked in a wartime vehicle factory to a teenager who had learned to drive in his grandfather's restored Mustang. The digital archive grew, the book took shape, and plans for an interactive exhibition began to solidify. 3 months into the project, Sebastian invited Eliza to accompany him to the annual Automotive Heritage Convention in London, a prestigious gathering of industry leaders, collectors, and historians that would be the perfect venue to preview some of their work. It's a week-long trip, he explained, watching her face carefully for her reaction. I understand if it's too much, especially with the project timeline. I'd love to go, she interrupted, surprising herself with her eagerness. The thought of exploring London with Sebastian, of experiencing his world on an international stage, was too tempting to refuse. The preparations for London consumed the next few weeks. Charlotte arranged for Eliza to meet with a stylist to select appropriate attire for the various events they would attend, a process that left her both exhilarated and uncomfortable. The clothes were beautiful, but far more expensive than anything she'd ever owned. Consider it a company expense, Sebastian insisted when she expressed concern about the cost. You're representing Harrington Motors. Besides, he added with a smile that made her pulse quicken, I want to see you outshine everyone else there. The flight to London on the Harrington private jet was an experience in luxury that Eliza could scarcely believe was her life now. As they crossed the Atlantic, Sebastian shared stories of previous conventions, preparing her for the personalities and politics she would encounter. The old guard can be traditional to the point of stubbornness, he warned. But they have incredible knowledge and respect for automotive history. The younger crowd is pushing for innovation, sometimes at the expense of heritage. We're trying to bridge that gap with the Heritage Project, honoring the past while embracing the future." End quote. Their hotel suite Sebastian had reserved adjoining rooms again, maintaining the appearance of propriety, was in a historic building overlooking Hyde Park. Upon arrival, Eliza found a bouquet of wildflowers waiting in her room, with a simple note, "To New Adventures, S." The gesture was so thoughtful, so perfectly aligned with her preference for natural beauty over formal arrangements, that Eliza felt a swell of emotion she couldn't quite name. In the 3 months they had been dancing around their attraction, Sebastian had proven himself attentive to the smallest details of her preferences and personality. It was a kind of care she had never experienced before. The convention opened with a formal reception at the Royal Automobile Club, a bastion of British automotive tradition. Eliza wore a midnight blue gown that the stylist had insisted brought out the gold flecks in her eyes, her hair styled in an elegant updo that made her feel like someone else entirely. Someone confident, someone who belonged in these rarefied circles. Sebastian met her at the door of her room, his sharp intake of breath at the sight of her more flattering than any verbal compliment. "You look stunning," he said simply, offering his arm. As they entered the grand ballroom together, Eliza was acutely aware of the eyes that turned their way. Sebastian Harrington was automotive royalty, his presence noted wherever he went. But now, those assessing gazes included her as well, curiosity and speculation evident in many faces. "Sebastian Harrington," boomed a voice with a distinctive German accent. "And who is this vision beside you?" The man who approached was older, his white hair contrasting with his tan skin, his bearing that of someone accustomed to power. Eliza recognized him from her research. Otto Kraus, head of a rival luxury car manufacturer. "Otto." Sebastian greeted him with a firm handshake. "May I present Eliza Bennett, the creative director of Harrington's Heritage Project. Eliza, Otto Kraus of Kraus Motors." Otto took her hand, raising it to his lips in an old-world gesture. "A pleasure, Ms. Bennett. I've heard rumors of this mysterious project. Sebastian has been unusually secretive about it. We wanted to wait until we had something substantial to share," Sebastian replied smoothly. "Eliza will be presenting a preview tomorrow at the Future of Automotive Narratives panel." Otto's eyebrows rose. "Intriguing. I look forward to it." His gaze moved between them, assessing. "You make a striking couple." Again, the assumption that they were romantically involved. This time, Sebastian didn't correct it, merely smiled enigmatically and guided Eliza deeper into the crowd. Throughout the evening, Sebastian introduced her to legends of the industry, collectors whose garages housed vehicles worth more than small countries, and innovators pushing the boundaries of what automobiles could be. Eliza found herself engaged in fascinating conversations, her knowledge of narrative and storytelling bringing a fresh perspective that many seemed to appreciate. When they finally returned to their hotel in the early hours of the morning, Eliza felt exhilarated rather than exhausted. "That was incredible," she told Sebastian as they stood in the corridor between their rooms. "Thank you for bringing me." He reached out, tucking a strand of hair that had escaped her updo behind her ear. The touch was gentle, intimate. "Thank you for coming, having you here." He paused, searching for words. "It makes everything more meaningful." They stood there, the air between them charged with unspoken feelings, until Sebastian took a small step back. "You should get some rest. Tomorrow's a big day." "Right," Eliza agreed, though rest was the furthest thing from her mind as she gazed at him, his formal attire making him even more handsome, if that were possible. "Good night, Sebastian." "Sweet dreams, Eliza," he replied, his voice low and warm, as he retreated to his room. The next morning, Eliza woke to a text from Sebastian, informing her that he had an early meeting, but would meet her at the convention center for her presentation. She took her time preparing, reviewing her notes one last time before heading downstairs to hail a taxi. The lobby was busy with morning check-ins and departures, and as Eliza waited for the doorman to signal a cab, she overheard a conversation that made her blood run cold. "It's classic Sebastian Harrington," a woman's voice said with a laugh. "Always the same pattern. Find some unassuming girl, make her feel special, use her for whatever project he's working on, then discard her when he's done. Remember that environmental activist last year, or the tech scass girl before that?" "At least this one's pretty," replied a male voice. "Did you see her last night? Though I doubt she has any real qualifications beyond catching his eye." 5 months, that's my bet," the woman said. "That's about how long his special projects usually last. Then poor little Cinderella goes back to wherever he found her." Eliza felt as if the floor had fallen away beneath her feet. She turned, unable to stop herself, and saw a glamorous couple waiting for the elevator. The woman in designer sunglasses despite being indoors, the man checking his watch with impatient taps of his finger. They were clearly industry insiders, the type who attended these events regularly, who knew the players and their patterns, including, apparently, Sebastian's. The doorman signaled that her taxi had arrived, and Eliza moved on autopilot, giving the driver the address of the convention center while her mind raced. Was it true? Was she just the latest in a line of projects women Sebastian used professionally and personally before moving on? Had their connection, which felt so genuine to her, been merely a calculated move on his part? By the time she arrived at the convention center, Eliza had worked herself into a state of confused hurt. She made her way to the presentation room, finding it already filling with attendees. The Heritage Project was generating buzz, it seemed. Sebastian was waiting backstage, his face lighting up when he saw her. "There you are," he said, moving forward as if to embrace her before sensing her reserve and stopping short. "Is everything all right?" "Fine," she replied, unable to meet his eyes. "Just nervous about the presentation." He studied her face, clearly not believing her, but choosing not to press. "You'll be brilliant. The work speaks for itself, and so do you." The panel moderator called them to the stage, and Eliza forced herself to focus on the task at hand. She presented the Heritage Project's findings so far, the patterns emerging from their interviews, the emotional connections people formed with their vehicles, the way cars became witnesses to life's most significant moments. The audience was receptive, asking thoughtful questions about methodology and future applications. Throughout, Sebastian remained by her side, deferring to her expertise, building on her points with his industry knowledge. Their professional dynamic was seamless, practiced over months of collaboration. But the easy comfort they had developed was missing, replaced by a tension that Eliza felt acutely. After the presentation, as attendees approached with follow-up questions and business cards, Eliza noticed the couple from the hotel lobby among the crowd. The woman was whispering something to her companion, both of them watching Sebastian with knowing smirks. It was too much. Eliza excused herself, claiming a need for fresh air, and escaped to a quiet terrace overlooking the convention center gardens. The late September air was crisp, carrying the first hints of autumn. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to sort through her tangled emotions. "Eliza." Sebastian's voice behind her was soft, concerned. She turned to find him standing in the doorway, his expression troubled. "What happened?" he asked, moving to stand beside her at the railing. "Since this morning, you've been different. Did I do something wrong?" Eliza hesitated, torn between confronting him and protecting herself from what might be a painful truth. But she had never been one to shy away from reality, however uncomfortable. "At the hotel," she began, "I overheard some people talking. About you. About us." Sebastian's face darkened. "What did they say?" "That I'm just your latest project girl," she said, the words bitter on her tongue. "That you have a pattern of finding women, making them feel special, using them for your work, and then discarding them." She looked up at him, needing to see his reaction. "They mentioned an environmental activist, a tech specialist. They're betting I'll be gone in 5 months. Sebastian's expression cycled through shock, anger, and finally, a deep weariness. "I can guess who you overheard," he said quietly. "Vanessa Cordell, and probably Richard Hurst. They're competitors, and more importantly, they've never forgiven me for some business decisions my father made years ago that impacted their families." "So it's not true?" Eliza asked, hope and doubt warring within her. Sebastian ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of discomposure. "It's complicated. Yes, I've worked with other women on special projects. Amara Khan led our sustainability initiative last year. She's the environmental activist, though she's actually an environmental engineer with multiple patents to her name. Before that, Dr. Maylin oversaw our autonomous driving technology development that would be the tech girl, who happens to hold a PhD from MIT." End quote. "And were you involved with them? Personally?" Eliza held her breath, not sure which answer would hurt more. "No," Sebastian said firmly. "Never. Both were married for one thing. More importantly, I respected them as colleagues." Relief flooded through Eliza, followed immediately by shame for doubting him. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have listened to gossip." "Don't apologize," Sebastian said, moving closer. "It's a fair question, given what you heard. But Eliza, you have to know." He took her hands in his gaze intense. "What's happening between us isn't a pattern or a project. It's—" He paused, seeming to search for the right words. "It's unprecedented for me. I've never felt this way about anyone." The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable, but doubt still lingered. "Then why not correct people when they assume we're a couple? Why let the speculation continue?" A shadow passed over Sebastian's face. "Selfishness, maybe," he admitted. "I like the way people see us together. I like that they assume you're mine." His thumb traced circles on her palm, sending shivers up her arm. "But if it makes you uncomfortable, I'll correct every assumption from now on." Eliza considered his words, the vulnerability in his admission. "And when the project ends, what happens to whatever this is between us?" Sebastian stepped closer, closing the distance between them. "That depends on what you want, Eliza. The project has always had a timeline, but my feelings for you don't." He was so close now that she could feel the warmth of his breath, could see the flecks of gold in his gray eyes. "And what are those feelings exactly?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Instead of answering with words, Sebastian bent his head and kissed her. It was gentle at first, a question more than a declaration. But when Eliza responded, sliding her hands up to his shoulders, the kiss deepened. His arms encircled her waist, drawing her against him as if he'd been waiting for this moment for as long as she had. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Sebastian rested his forehead against hers. "I'm falling in love with you, Eliza Bennett," he murmured. "And it has nothing to do with projects or patterns or cars or books. It's just you. The way you light up when you talk about stories that move you. How you remember everyone's name at the office. From the executives to the custodial staff. The little crease between your eyebrows when you're concentrating. All of it." Eliza felt tears prick at her eyes, overwhelmed by the emotion in his words, and the realization that her own feelings mirrored his. "I'm falling in love with you too," she confessed. "And it terrifies me. Your world is so different from mine. I keep waiting to wake up from this dream, to find myself back in my apartment with my books and my ordinary life. Sebastian brushed away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. This is real, Eliza. I'm real, and I don't care about worlds or differences or what anyone else thinks. I just want you, however you'll have me. Their second kiss was deeper, a promise exchanged without words. When they finally returned to the convention, Eliza's hand firmly clasped in Sebastian's, the speculation and whispers no longer bothered her. Let them talk. What she and Sebastian shared was beyond their understanding. The remainder of their time in London was a delicate balance of professional obligations and stolen moments together. They explored the city in the gaps between convention events, visiting small bookshops in Bloomsbury, discovering hidden gardens where they could talk for hours undisturbed, sharing meals in cozy pubs away from the industry crowd. On their final night, Sebastian took her to dinner at a small, exclusive restaurant overlooking the Thames. As they sipped champagne and watched the lights of the city reflect on the water, he reached across the table to take her hand. "I've been thinking," he said, his expression serious, "about what happens when we go back to New York. About us." Eliza felt a flutter of anxiety. Despite their declarations, the real world waited for them beyond this London interlude. "What are you thinking?" "I want to do this properly," Sebastian said. "No more adjoining hotel rooms, no more pretending our relationship is purely professional. If you're comfortable with it, I'd like us to be open about being together." "What about the Heritage Project?" Eliza asked. "Won't people say I got the position because of us?" Sebastian shook his head. "The work you've done speaks for itself. Anyone who's seen the project knows your value. Besides," he added with a slight smile, "technically, our relationship developed after I hired you. We've done everything by the book. Eliza laughed softly. "Is there a book for this situation? How to date your billionaire boss after he changes your flat tire? If there isn't, you should write it," Sebastian teased, lifting her hand to his lips. "What do you say, Eliza? Are you willing to take this step with me?" Looking into his eyes, Eliza found her answer easily. "Yes," she said simply. "I want to be with you, Sebastian, however complicated it might be." His smile was radiant, transforming his habitually serious face. "Then it's settled. When we return to New York, we begin our real story. No more hiding, no more uncertainty." They sealed the agreement with a kiss, surrounded by the lights of London and the promise of a future neither could have imagined on that rainy night months before. The return to New York brought changes, both expected and surprising. True to his word, Sebastian made no secret of their relationship. They arrived at headquarters together on their first day back, his hand supportively at the small of her back as they entered the building. The news spread quickly, as gossip always does in corporate environments, but the reactions were largely positive. The Heritage Project team seemed particularly unsurprised, exchanging knowing glances that suggested they had seen this coming long before Eliza and Sebastian acknowledged it themselves. Charlotte, ever the professional, treated the development with characteristic efficiency. "I've updated the HR records to reflect your relationship," she informed Eliza matter-of-factly. "Mr. Harrington has recused himself from any direct decisions regarding your compensation or project oversight. I'll be handling those aspects moving forward." "Thank you, Charlotte," Eliza replied, grateful for the woman's discretion and support. "For what it's worth," Charlotte added, a rare personal comment from the typically reserved assistant. "I've worked with Sebastian for 8 years. I've never seen him like this before. He's lighter somehow." The observation stayed with Eliza as she returned to her work, lending a deeper significance to the changes she had observed in Sebastian. He had always been serious, focused, driven, but now there was a playfulness to him, a willingness to step away from work occasionally, to prioritize their time together. As autumn deepened around them, their relationship flourished alongside the Heritage Project. Weekends were spent exploring New York City, as if both were seeing it for the first time. Sebastian, introducing Eliza to exclusive places she'd never known existed. Eliza showing him the hidden bookshops and cozy cafes where she'd spent countless hours. Evenings often found them at Sebastian's penthouse, a space that initially intimidated Eliza with its sleek design and panoramic views, but gradually began to feel like a second home. One particular evening, About a month after their return from London, Eliza was curled on Sebastian's couch, reviewing interview transcripts while he made dinner, a domestic skill that had surprised her pleasantly. "I've been thinking," Sebastian called from the kitchen, where delicious aromas of garlic and rosemary were emanating. "The Heritage Project is entering its final phase. The book manuscript is nearly complete. The exhibition design is underway. What are your plans for after?" The question caught Eliza off guard. She had been so immersed in the project, in their relationship, that she'd avoided thinking about its eventual conclusion. "I don't know," she admitted. "The bookstore offered to take me back, but?" Sebastian prompted, appearing in the doorway with a wooden spoon in hand. "But it feels like going backward," she confessed. "After everything I'd experienced, everything I've learned, I'm not the same person who left there." Sebastian nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I have a proposition, if you're interested. Not another flat tire scenario, I hope," she teased. He smiled, returning to the kitchen to attend to their meal. "The response to the Heritage Project has been incredible. The advance orders for the book, the interest in the exhibition, it's exceeded all our expectations. The board is proposing we establish a permanent division focused on customer narratives and brand heritage." End quote. Eliza sat up straighter, immediately seeing where this was headed. "And you want me to run it?" "I want you to consider it," Sebastian clarified, coming back to lean against the doorframe. "It would be a director-level position, reporting to Charlotte rather than me to maintain professional boundaries. You'd have a team, a budget, creative freedom, the kind of role that could grow with you." Why? The offer was tempting. More than tempting. It represented everything Eliza had discovered she loved about her work with the Heritage Project. The blend of storytelling and business, the opportunity to connect people through shared experiences, the platform to elevate ordinary voices. But there was a shadow of doubt. Would I be earning it? Or would people assume I got it because of us? Sebastian's expression softened. "You've more than earned it, Eliza. The project's success is largely due to your vision and leadership. Anyone who's seen your work knows that." He crossed to sit beside her on the couch, taking her hands in his. "But, ultimately, it's your decision. I want you to be happy, whether that's at Harrington Motors or somewhere else entirely." Eliza studied their intertwined fingers, his strong and certain, hers smaller but equally determined. "I need to think about it," she said finally. "It's a big decision." "Of course," Sebastian agreed easily. "Take all the time you need. Now, dinner's ready, and I've been slaving over that risotto for nearly an hour, so I expect appropriate appreciation." The moment of tension broke, and Eliza laughed, following him to the dining table. As they ate, conversation flowed to other topics: the upcoming exhibition opening, a book Sebastian was reading on her recommendation, plans for the weekend. But the job offer lingered in the back of Eliza's mind, a possibility that both excited and unnerved her. The following weekend, Eliza went home for her parents' anniversary dinner trip she'd been putting off but could no longer avoid. Sebastian offered to accompany her, but she declined, needing to face her family on her own terms before introducing the complication of her relationship with one of the country's wealthiest bachelors. The modest suburban house where she'd grown up felt smaller somehow, more confined than she remembered. Her mother fussed over the meal. Her father asked perfunctory questions about her work without really listening to the answers. And Caroline dominated the conversation with stories of her honeymoon and new home. Renovations. It wasn't until they were clearing the dishes that Caroline cornered Eliza in the kitchen, her expression curious. "You're different," she observed, studying her sister's face. "More confident, and you're practically glowing. What's going on?" Eliza hesitated, then decided to share at least part of the truth. "I met someone," she admitted quietly. "It's serious." Caroline's eyes widened. "You? In a serious relationship? Who is he? How did you meet? Why haven't you said anything until now?" The barrage of questions was typical Caroline, always wanting all the details immediately. "His name is Sebastian," Eliza said, keeping it simple. "We met when I had a flat tire, and he stopped to help. It's been developing slowly over the past few months." "Wait," Caroline said, her brow furrowing. "Sebastian who? What does he do?" Eliza took a deep breath. Sebastian Harrington. He's the CEO of Harrington Motors. It's complicated. Her sister's jaw dropped. Harrington Motors? As in the luxury car company? Eliza, that's... She seemed at a loss for words, a rare occurrence. How did you manage to land a billionaire? The phrasing made Eliza wince. I didn't land anyone, Caroline. We connected. We care about each other. It's not about his money or position. Caroline looked skeptical. Sure, but it can't hurt, right? I mean, this is the girl who used to hide in the library during lunch. Now you're dating one of the most eligible bachelors in the country? It's like a movie. Before Eliza could respond, their mother entered the kitchen, catching the tail end of the conversation. What's like a movie? She asked, looking between her daughters. Eliza is dating Sebastian Harrington, Caroline announced before Eliza could stop her. You know, the car guy. Their mother's face registered surprise, followed quickly by calculation, a look Eliza recognized from childhood, the assessment of social implications and potential advantages. The Harrington family? Really, Eliza? That's unexpected. The undercurrent was clear. How could someone like Eliza attract someone like Sebastian Harrington? Eliza felt a familiar sting, the old insecurity creeping back despite all the confidence she'd built over the past months. It's not that surprising, Mom, she said, more sharply than intended. We connected through our work. He values my perspective, my skills. It's not some fairy tale or accident. Her mother looked taken aback by her assertiveness. I didn't mean... Of course he would value you, dear. You've always been so... thoughtful. The conversation segued uncomfortably into questions about when they might meet Sebastian, whether he would be joining them for the holidays, how serious things really were. Eliza deflected as best she could, increasingly aware of the gulf between her new life and the family that had known her only as quiet, shy, dependable Eliza, the girl who wouldn't make waves, who would never surprise them. Later that night, in her childhood bedroom surrounded by the books that had been her earliest friends, Eliza called Sebastian. Hey, he answered warmly. How's the family dinner going? It's over, thankfully, she sighed. Caroline wheedled it out of me about us, and then told my mother. Now they're both in a state of shock that someone like you would be interested in someone like me. Someone like you? Sebastian repeated, his tone sharpening. What's that supposed to mean? You know, Eliza said, staring up at the glow-into-dark stars still stuck to her ceiling from childhood. Quiet, bookish, unremarkable. Eliza Bennett, Sebastian said firmly. You are the furthest thing from unremarkable I have ever encountered. You're brilliant, perceptive, kind, and stronger than you give yourself credit for. If your family can't see that, it's their loss. His certainty warmed her, pushing back against the old insecurities. Thank you, she whispered. I needed to hear that. It's just, being here makes me feel like I'm stepping back into an old version of myself. A smaller version. Then come home, Sebastian said simply. Your real home, where you can be who you are now. The words struck Eliza profoundly. Home. Not her apartment, which had felt increasingly like a temporary space, but with Sebastian. She realized with sudden clarity that she'd already made her decision, not just about the job, but about her life's direction. I will, she promised. And Sebastian, I've been thinking about your offer, about the heritage division. I want to accept it, not because of us, but because it's what I want for myself, for my career. I believe in the work we're doing. She could hear the smile in his voice as he replied, I never doubted you'd make the right choice for you. We'll talk details when you're back. For now, survive the family visit and know that I'm counting the hours until I see you again. After saying goodbye, Eliza lay in her narrow bed, staring at the ceiling and contemplating the strange journey that had brought her here from a rain-soaked roadside to the threshold of a new life she could never have imagined. A flat tire, a chance encounter, a connection that defied explanation. It felt like fate, though she'd never believed in such things before meeting Sebastian. The Heritage Project's exhibition opening was scheduled for the first week of December, timed to coincide with the release of the book, and the announcement of Harrington Motors' new electric vehicle line. As the date approached, Eliza found herself working longer hours, ensuring every detail was perfect from the curation of the stories to the physical layout of the exhibition space. Sebastian was equally busy, dividing his time between the Heritage Project and the broader company launch. They stole moments together when they could, but often collapsed into exhausted sleep at the end of long days, their conversations brief exchanges of progress updates and affectionate reassurances. 3 days before the opening, Eliza was at the exhibition space, a converted warehouse in Brooklyn that balanced industrial charm with elegant design, overseeing the installation of the final displays. The space told the story of America's relationship with automobiles through personal narratives, photos, artifacts, and interactive elements. At its center was a timeline featuring selected Harrington models alongside the stories of the people who had owned them, driven them, loved them. Eliza was adjusting the lighting on a particularly poignant display, a collection of letters exchanged between a soldier in Vietnam and his wife, who wrote about teaching their young son to care for the family's Harrington sedan in his father's absence. When she sensed someone watching her, turning, she found an older man observing her with keen interest. His silver hair and dignified bearing reminded her immediately of Sebastian, though his features were more weathered, his build slightly stouter. "Mr. Harrington," she said, recognizing Sebastian's father. "I didn't know you were visiting today." William Harrington approached, his gaze taking in the exhibition space with the practiced assessment of someone who had built an empire on attention to detail. "I wanted to see this project my son has been so passionate about," he said, his voice carrying the same rich timbre as Sebastian's but with a gravitas that came only with age and experience. "You must be Eliza Bennett." "Yes, sir," she confirmed, extending her hand. "It's an honor to meet you." His handshake was firm, his eyes searching hers with an intensity that reminded her forcefully of Sebastian. "The honor is mine, Ms. Bennett. I've heard a great deal about you, both professionally and personally." Eliza felt herself blushing slightly. "Sebastian mentioned you might attend the opening." "I wouldn't miss it," William replied, turning to survey the exhibition again. This represents a significant departure for Harrington Motors. Bold, innovative, focusing on the human element rather than just mechanical excellence. He paused, a slight smile softening his serious expression. "Very much in keeping with Sebastian's vision for the company's future. He's passionate about preserving the heritage while embracing change," Eliza said, finding herself defending Sebastian's approach, even though his father hadn't criticized it. "The stories we've collected show that people's emotional connections to their vehicles transcend technological shifts." William nodded, seeming pleased by her response. "My son has always understood that Harrington Motors is about more than just cars. It's about the moments they enable, the memories they hold." He turned back to her, his gaze direct. "He credits you with helping articulate that vision more effectively than anyone before." Eliza felt a swell of pride at the acknowledgement. "It's been a collaborative effort. The whole team has—" "Ms. Bennett," William interrupted gently, "I've been in business long enough to recognize when credit is due. This project bears your imprint clearly." He gestured toward the timeline display. "The narrative structure, the emotional resonance, the way you've woven individual stories into a collective experience. These reflect what Sebastian has told me about your background in literature and personal narratives." "Thank you," Eliza said simply, touched by his recognition. William studied her for a moment longer. "My son also tells me you'll be heading the new permanent division focused on heritage and customer narratives." "That's the plan," she confirmed, still somewhat amazed by this turn in her career path. "A wise decision," he approved. "Both your appointment and the establishment of the division. Harrington has always excelled at engineering and design. Adding a dedicated focus on the human element will strengthen our connection with customers." And he paused, his expression becoming more personal. "If I may speak frankly, Ms. Bennett?" Eliza nodded, curious and slightly nervous about what might follow. "I've known my son his entire life. Watched him grow from a curious boy fascinated by engine parts to a capable leader ready to take Harrington Motors into a new era. In all that time, I've never seen him as centered, as purpose-driven, as he has been. And since meeting you, William's gaze was penetrating but kind. His mother would have liked you very much, I think. The mention of Sebastian's late mother caught Eliza by surprise. Sebastian rarely spoke of her, the loss still painful decades later. That means a great deal to me, Mr. Harrington. William, please, he insisted with a wave of his hand. We're practically family after all. Before Eliza could process the implication of his words, a familiar voice called from the entrance. Dad? I thought we were meeting at the office. Sebastian approached, his expression a mixture of surprise and concern as he looked between his father and Eliza. I see you two have met, he observed, coming to stand beside Eliza, his hand resting lightly at the small of her back, in a gesture that had become habitual. Indeed we have, William confirmed, a knowing look passing between father and son. Ms. Bennet has been showing me the exhibition. Impressive work, both of you. Eliza's vision, Sebastian said immediately, giving her credit without hesitation. I just provided the resources. And the inspiration, Eliza added, unwilling to let him diminish his contribution. The project wouldn't exist without your belief in the power of these stories. William watched their exchange with evident approval. Well, I won't keep you from your work. Sebastian, we can review those documents later. Ms. Bennet and Eliza look forward to seeing the finished exhibition at the opening. With a nod to them both, he turned and left, his posture straight despite his years. Once he was gone, Sebastian turned to Eliza, his expression questioning. What did he say to you? He can be direct, sometimes. Eliza smiled, touched by Sebastian's protective concern. Nothing worrying. He was complimentary about the exhibition, about my role in it, and, she added, her smile widening, he implied we were practically family. Sebastian's eyebrows rose. Did he now? That's unexpected. My father isn't usually so quick to embrace change, especially in my personal life. He said I've had a good influence on you, Eliza teased, sliding her arms around Sebastian's waist. That you're more centered now. He's right, Sebastian acknowledged, his hands settling on her shoulders. I am. You ground me, Eliza. You help me see beyond spreadsheets and design specifications to what really matters, the human connections, the stories, the quiet moments. He bent to kiss her briefly, mindful of their public setting. I've been meaning to ask you something. What's that? She asked, curious about his suddenly serious tone. After the exhibition opening, after the book launch and all the chaos dies down, would you consider moving in with me? Officially, I mean. Most of your things are at my place already, and it seems silly for you to keep paying rent on an apartment you barely use. Though they had been practically living together for weeks, the formal request caught Eliza off guard. It represented another step forward, another commitment deepening their relationship. Are you sure? She asked. Your space is so yours, designed for you, and now I want it to be ours, Sebastian said simply. Redesign whatever you want. Bring in more bookshelves, God knows you need them. Make it a home, not just a showcase apartment. The sincerity in his eyes melted any hesitation Eliza might have felt. Yes, she agreed, her heart full. I'd love to move in with you. Sebastian's smile was radiant. Good. That's good. He kissed her again, lingering a moment longer this time. Now, show me what you've been working on with the display lighting. Charlotte says you've been here until midnight 3 nights running. Eliza launched into an explanation of the technical challenges they'd faced with the lighting design, grateful for Sebastian's genuine interest and suggestions. They worked side by side for the remainder of the afternoon, their professional rapport as strong as their personal connection, each bringing different strengths to the project that had brought them together. The night of the exhibition opening arrived with a flurry of last-minute adjustments and nervous anticipation. Eliza wore a deep green gown that complemented her auburn hair, which she'd styled in loose waves falling over her shoulders. Sebastian, striking in a perfectly tailored black suit, found her in the small office they'd set up at the back of the exhibition space. Nervous? He asked, noticing her hands smoothing invisible wrinkles from her dress. Terrified, she admitted with a small laugh. All these people coming to see something I helped create. What if they hate it? What if the stories don't resonate the way we think they will? Sebastian took her hands in his, stilling their nervous movement. They will love it because it's authentic, heartfelt, and beautifully executed. Just like you. He pressed a kiss to her forehead, careful not to smudge her makeup. It's time. Shall we? Together, they moved to the entrance, where guests were beginning to arrive: automotive industry leaders, media personalities, cultural influencers, and the subjects of many of the stories featured in the exhibition. Eliza greeted them alongside Sebastian, growing more confident with each positive reaction to the concept and execution. Caroline arrived with her husband James, both wide-eyed at the scale and sophistication of the event. "This is incredible, Eliza," her sister exclaimed, genuinely impressed. "And Sebastian, it's so wonderful to finally meet you. My sister has been positively secretive about you." Sebastian charmed them easily, his natural diplomacy smoothing any awkwardness. He seemed genuinely interested in James's work as an architect and Caroline's event planning business, drawing them out with thoughtful questions that made them feel valued and interesting. Eliza's parents arrived shortly after, her mother clearly overwhelmed by the glamour of the event, and her father uncharacteristically quiet as he took in the exhibition space. Sebastian greeted them warmly, thanking them for raising such an extraordinary daughter with a sincerity that seemed to catch them off guard. "We always knew Eliza was special," her mother said, though Eliza could hear the note of surprise in her voice, as if she were seeing her daughter clearly for the first time. "She's always been so dedicated to her interests. Her brilliance and perspective have transformed how Harrington Motors thinks about our relationship with customers," Sebastian said, his arm around Eliza's waist. This entire project was built on her understanding of narrative and human connection. Eliza watched her parents' expressions shift as they processed Sebastian's words, saw the dawning realization that their quiet, bookish daughter had found not just a successful man who valued her, but a place where her particular gifts were recognized and celebrated. "We're very proud," her father said finally, with a warmth that made Eliza's throat tighten unexpectedly. As her family moved into the exhibition, Eliza turned to Sebastian. "Thank you," she whispered, "for seeing me, even when they didn't." He squeezed her hand in response, his eyes conveying what words couldn't in the busy entrance. The evening progressed smoothly, with attendees moving through the exhibition space, engaging with the interactive elements, and sharing their own car stories inspired by the displays. William Harrington made a brief speech about the company's commitment to honoring its heritage while embracing innovation, followed by Sebastian's introduction of the new electric vehicle line that would bridge that gap. When it came time for Eliza to speak about the Heritage Project, she felt a momentary flutter of panic. Public speaking had never been her strong suit. She preferred to let her writing speak for her. But as she took her place at the podium, she saw Sebastian watching her with absolute confidence, Charlotte nodding encouragingly, and even her family leaning forward with interest. Taking a deep breath, she began to speak about the power of stories, about how cars were not just machines, but vessels for human experience, about how the project had revealed connections across generations and backgrounds. Her voice grew stronger as she spoke, her natural eloquence emerging as she shared anecdotes from their research. The veteran, who credited his Harrington with saving his life in a crash. The family who had passed the same vintage model through 3 generations. The young woman who had found independence and confidence behind the wheel. "These aren't just stories about cars," she concluded, her gaze sweeping the attentive audience. "They're stories about us, about freedom and connection, about journeys both literal and figurative, about the vehicles that carry us through the most significant moments of our lives. Thank you for allowing us to share them with you tonight." The applause was immediate and enthusiastic, Sebastian's face alight with pride as he rejoined her at the podium to close the formal portion of the evening. As guests returned to exploring the exhibition and enjoying the refreshments, Eliza found herself surrounded by people congratulating her, asking questions about the research process, sharing their own car memories. It was late in the evening when she finally had a moment to herself, stepping outside for a breath of fresh air on the small terrace adjacent to the warehouse. The December night was cold but clear, stars visible despite the city lights. Eliza gazed up at them, reflecting on the extraordinary journey that had brought her here from a rain-soaked rural road to this moment of professional and personal fulfillment. "There you are." Sebastian's voice came from behind her. "I've been looking for you. Everything okay?" She turned to find him watching her with that particular intensity that still made her heart skip. "Just taking a moment to process it all," she explained. "It's been overwhelming, in the best possible way." Sebastian moved to stand beside her, looking up at the same stars. "You were magnificent tonight, Eliza. Your speech, the way you engaged with everyone. You've come so far from the shy girl I met on that rainy night." "Have I?" she mused. "Or was I always this person, just waiting for the right circumstances to emerge?" "Both, I think," Sebastian replied thoughtfully. "The core of who you are hasn't changed: your kindness, your perception, your deep appreciation for stories. But you've grown into yourself, claimed your space." He turned to face her fully. "I'm honored to have witnessed it." Eliza looked into his eyes, seeing the depth of feeling there. "I wouldn't have found this version of myself without you, Sebastian. Not just the opportunity you gave me, but the way you saw me from the beginning. Not as the quiet bookstore clerk, but as someone with value, with something to offer." "You had that value all along," he insisted. "I just recognized it." He took her hands in his expression suddenly nervous in a way she rarely saw. "Eliza, there's something I want to ask you." Her breath caught as Sebastian reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. "I had planned to wait until after the exhibition, after all the chaos died down," he said, his voice husky with emotion. "But seeing you tonight, your strength, your grace, the way you've made this project soar beyond my highest hopes, I can't wait another day." He sank to one knee on the terrace, still holding her hand. The box opened to reveal a stunning, vintage-inspired diamond ring that sparkled in the starlight. "Eliza Bennett, from the moment I saw you in the rain with that flat tire, something in me recognized something in you. I don't believe in fate, but I do believe in that recognition, that sense of finding a person who completes you in ways you didn't even know you were incomplete." End quote. He took a breath, his eyes never leaving hers. "I love you, your mind, your heart, your quiet strength, your capacity for seeing beauty in ordinary moments. Will you marry me?" Tears filled Eliza's eyes, blurring the stars above them. The journey from that rainy night to this moment seemed both impossibly long and incredibly swift. A story she couldn't have written for herself, but now couldn't imagine any other way. "Yes," she whispered, then more firmly, "Yes, Sebastian, I love you, and yes, I'll marry you." His face lit with joy as he slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood to gather her in his arms. Their kiss was a promise, sealed beneath the winter stars, witnessed only by the night sky, a private moment of commitment, before they would share their news with the waiting world inside. As they finally broke apart, Sebastian rested his forehead against hers. "I should warn you," he murmured. "Marriage to a Harrington comes with certain complications. Public scrutiny, business obligations, charity galas." "Charity galas? I think I can handle it," Eliza replied with a smile, her finger tracing the line of his jaw. "After all, I managed to change a flat tire with a billionaire in the pouring rain. Everything else is just details." Sebastian laughed, the sound full of happiness and relief. "That's my girl," he said, taking her hand. "Now, shall we go back inside and shock all those industry veterans who never thought they'd see the day Sebastian Harrington settled down?" "Let's," Eliza agreed, letting him lead her back toward the light and warmth of the exhibition, toward the future they would build together, one story, one moment, one journey at a time. The news of their engagement spread quickly through the exhibition, drawing congratulations from colleagues, friends, and even competitors. William Harrington embraced Eliza warmly, whispering, "Welcome to the family, my dear," with genuine affection. Charlotte allowed herself a rare smile, confiding that she had helped Sebastian select the ring weeks ago. Eliza's family reacted with varying degrees of shock and delight. Caroline immediately launching into discussions of wedding venues, while their parents seemed still to be processing that their bookish daughter was marrying into one of America's wealthiest families. But for Eliza And Sebastian? The engagement was less about joining fortunes or families than about formalizing the connection that had begun on that rain-soaked rural road. A connection neither could explain, but both recognized as extraordinary. A once-in-a-lifetime alignment of hearts and minds. In the weeks that followed, as Eliza settled into both her new role heading the Heritage Division and her new life with Sebastian, she often thought about the strange serendipity of their meeting. A flat tire that might have been a disaster had instead been the beginning of everything. One rainy night, one act of kindness, one moment of connection that had changed the course of two lives. The Heritage Project continued to expand under Eliza's leadership, collecting stories from across the country and eventually around the world, preserving the human experiences that gave meaning to mechanical buyer innovation. Sebastian led Harrington Motors into a new era of sustainable luxury, his vision strengthened by Eliza's perspective on what truly mattered to people beyond horsepower and handling. Together, they built a life that balanced ambition with authenticity, success with meaningful connection. A journey neither could have navigated alone. And whenever anyone asked how they met, Eliza would smile and begin the story that still seemed too perfect to be true. I got a flat tire on a rainy night, and a stranger stopped to help me. The stranger who had become her everything, proving that sometimes the most extraordinary journeys begin with the simplest acts of kindness on the most ordinary of roads.